Hey guys, how's it going? Eu sou Dave Lee, de Dave Lee's English, e tenho algo muito especial hoje. Eu quis analisar o inglês do Anderson, do canal The English Room. Eu entrevistei ele em inglês e pensei, deve ser bom se meus alunos e pessoas que veem meu canal podem ouvir como foi o inglês dele e como você pode melhorar seu inglês também. Então, se você quiser, pode ver as legendas lá embaixo, porque a maioria deste vídeo será em inglês. Então, vamos começar.
All right, all right, all right.
Okay, so tell me about yourself. First of all, where were you born? And
All right, I was born and raised in Campos do Jordão. It's a countryside city in the countryside of São Paulo. It's actually in the mountains, so it's a very cold city. Um, Especially during the winter, we can reach -4, -6. It's pretty cold.
wow, see, that's very rare in Brazil. People in the
Yeah,
United States would not believe that.
that's why it's a touristic place. Everybody goes there just to see the cold weather, and the architecture is pretty different as well. So it's a worth visiting place.
Oh, wow. And how did you get involved with studying and teaching English?
Wow, it's a long story. I'll try to make it short. I always loved English. I always liked it. It was always associated with something pleasant for me. For example, I used to like to play video games in English. I used to like to listen to music, and English was always something good in my life. And in 2009, I went to the United States for the first time. I took an exchange course. And when I returned to Brazil, I realized that if I didn't do something related to English in terms of profession, I would forget everything I learned. And it was a pretty expensive exchange program. I saved money for over a year to go to the United States. So I said, no, I cannot allow this to fade, to wear off.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to start working with English. And then I applied for a position in the bank I was working for. And I started attending governments. When they want to bring money to Brazil, I was there to explain them how to. And then after 6 months, I applied for a teaching position at a school here in Brazil. And for my surprise, I was approved. And since then, I discovered a new passion in my life because English is something very interesting. You learn a new thing every day, as you learn in Portuguese as well. But
Okay, so tell me about yourself. First of all, where were you born? And
all right, I was born and raised in Campos do Jordão. It's a countryside city in the countryside of São Paulo. It's actually in the mountains, so it's a very cold city. Um,
okay, and right here he was basically telling me where he was from, and he said it was from in the countryside of Sao Paulo. It was maybe a little redundant, but that's when two people are speaking, two natives are speaking, that's exactly the thing you'd expect. Uh, a little repetitiveness in the conversation, and the way he said mountainside, that was good. These words like mountain and fountain is kind of strange. It's like the word mount and then just the sound and it was pretty close.
Especially during the winter, we can reach -4, -6. It's pretty cold.
There has been nothing up to this point that would hinder understanding from a native perspective. Wow. See, that's very rare in Brazil. People in the
Yeah,
United States would not believe that.
that's why it's a touristic place. Everybody goes there just to see the cold weather, and the architecture is pretty different as well. So it's a worth visiting place.
Okay, now here's where there were just some minor mistakes. Like he said, a touristic place, which makes sense. That's not really a mistake. Probably a more common English expression is it's a popular tourist destination. And instead of see the cold weather, we would say experience the cold weather. You know, you can see the sights, but you would experience the cold weather. Then the word architecture has four syllables, and you know he was speaking fairly quickly, and it kind of got jumbled up just a little bit, but a person would still be able to understand that. And then uh, the biggest thing I think is he probably should have said a place worth visiting. It's a place worth visiting. But again, there's really nothing going on so far that would hinder the understanding from a native perspective. Oh, wow. And how did you get involved with studying and teaching English?
Wow, it's a long story. I'll try to make it short. I always loved English. I always liked it. It was always associated with something pleasant for me. For example, I used to like to play video games in English. I used to like to listen to music, and
Mhm. And really, there's nothing wrong here. He said it was always associated with something positive or something like that for me, which you know uh, a native may say it a little differently, but I could see even a native, saying exactly everything that Anderson said at that point.
English was always something good in my life, you know? And in 2009, I went to the United States for the first time. I took an exchange course. And when I returned to Brazil, I realized that if I didn't do something related to English in terms of profession, I would forget everything I learned. And it was a
Okay, yeah. The only thing I caught there was when he said returned to Brazil, he kind of said returned, the ed on the end of words in the past tense. Uh, a lot of times they end with a D sound or a T sound, and they don't add a syllable. But a super Brazilian thing to do is always put the id sound. So it sounded a little like returned, like three syllables instead of returned. But that was the only thing I heard there.
pretty expensive exchange program. I saved money for over a year to go to the United States. So I said, no, I cannot allow this to fade, to wear off.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to start working with English. And then I applied for a position in the bank I was working for. And I started attending governments. When they want to bring money to Brazil, I was there to explain them how to. And
And that was all good. I think a native may say, I can't afford to lose this skill or something like that. And then I started attending, probably a native would say, I started working with foreign governments uh, instead of attending governments. And especially if you add the word foreign in there, people will know automatically you're talking about governments from overseas instead of state and local governments in Brazil. But right after that, he comes back and lets you know in another way that it is foreign governments. So again, no big deal here.
then after 6 months, I applied for a teaching position at a school here in Brazil. And for my surprise, I was approved. And since then, I discovered a new passion in my life because, English is something very interesting. You learn a new thing every day.
And this is another thing super common. I have a lot of trouble with this in Portuguese, prepositions. He said, to my surprise, it should be, he said, for my surprise, it should be, to my surprise, I was accepted. Okay, so let me sum it up. First of all, the rest of the video is available, and I can leave a link to that so you can see the rest of it. But just analyzing this, we can see several things. First of all, that Anderson has a very, very high level of English. He is very fluent, and the mistakes he makes are the most common mistakes that Brazilians make, basically prepositions, the ed on the end of verbs, but also he covered a wide range of subjects. And so he's not just fluent in one area, he's fluent in several areas. So this is good. This is the kind of fluency you should aspire for, is to be able to speak on various topics, whatever topics you may be interested in, to the same level he did. And again, first of all, mistakes are not a big deal. He never made any mistake that made me think, what are you talking about? The other thing is accents are not a big deal. He still has an accent, and his accent was not a problem at all. The only time an accent is a problem is when it's so thick that you can't be understood, and that's not the case for him at all. So in conclusion, I would just say, you should aspire to be a speaker like Anderson. You should aspire to a high level, not worry about the fact that you're going to make mistakes, because you are. It's not a big deal. Even native speakers make mistakes. And the other thing, don't worry about your accent, because accents are a big deal. And if you can try to do what Anderson did, just keep learning, keep getting a little better every day, you're going to reach your goals. And in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. And if you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks, God bless you, and we'll see you next time.